Phil Spencer speaks at a gaming conference, Sony announces VR, and more games, they're coming to the PC. For a particular Tuesday, there has been a lot of news just rammed right into the morning. And so, let's just kind of do a little bundling of what is going on here, because Phil Spencer spoke at the first, I think it's the first large gaming thing that Microsoft is doing in 2021. It was an AI and gaming conference, and Phil kicked it off with a keynote, if you will. We'll be looking at his background here in a second. Sony came out and announced a bunch of stuff today. And, well, there's another gaming conference that's coming later this year that we should just, we should just talk about it. So that's what we're here to do. First things first, we are kicking off that Sony today announced a new VR headset that is coming to the PlayStation 5. And by announcing, they didn't really announce it. They announced that they're working on it and that it's coming, but it won't be coming until next year. But they do have PSVR. And it's a great way to add virtual reality to your existing console, right? Many people put these things in their living room. That's a great place to use VR. And so Sony is obviously building on that. And clearly it looks like they had some success with their last generation. Otherwise, they wouldn't be building a next generation. But we don't have a look at the device. We don't really know too much about it, other than it will take some characteristics of the PSVR controller and include some of those features. I would fully expect higher resolution, just better performance, and overall just a nice bump in specs across the board for the PSVR headset. And look for that to arrive next year. There's already titles being built for this product, so no surprise there. This is Sony's kind of marching orders. They do this frequently, and I think it's smart, right? It didn't make sense to launch it with the console. It makes sense to launch it a little bit later, so that there's a little bit more noise, hype, and you can get more attach rate, because these things probably aren't going to be cheap, although we don't know pricing, and I'm not even going to speculate about it, but they're typically not, it's not like a $50 purchase is what I'm hinting at here. And so be on the lookout for that. Also, Sony is saying, hey, look, we're having some good luck. We're bringing titles over to the PC, and we're going to be bringing more. So Days Gone is going to be coming to the PC. And so be on the lookout for that coming here in the near future. But really, we have kind of fully entered into the market now that there's such things as console exclusives, but everything kind of ends up on the PC, because the PC just continues again and again to prove to be a nice additional way for companies to take titles that they own and just get more revenue out of them, especially with these later generation. Even on the PlayStation side, they're much closer to PCs than they are standalone boutique pieces of hardware. And so it's just easier for companies to bring them over to the PC. And if they know that they're going to be doing that eventually, just building the game out organically to work in both environments makes a lot of sense. I still expect that we will see things, especially on the PlayStation side, where it's like a timed exclusive, where it's only available on the console, and then it comes to the PC eventually. That model would not surprise me at all. Obviously, Microsoft is very much all in on their console exclusives, at least first party, are in Game Pass on day one in that sort of scenario. So it's just a different way of Sony approaching it, but I don't want to say it's free money, because there is capital investment involved to get to that point, but it's significantly less than building a game from the ground up, if you will. Now, will we see like the new Spider-Man that shift with the console coming over? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what eventually makes its way out. Now, speaking of VR, what about Microsoft in the VR side? Is Microsoft ever going to enter the VR side? Sony is obviously doing it. Well, realistically, Microsoft has already entered the VR side. They have Windows mixed reality, and we've talked about it here on this podcast channel a couple times, or video, YouTube, whatever you want to call this thing. We've talked about it a couple times. The Microsoft could, in theory, bring these headsets over to support their console. We've already seen the mechanics there exist, and I believe the ports exist. You might have to do some plugging and unplugging. We're not quite sure yet if Microsoft is going to go this route, but in theory, they could bring a VR headset that works with their console. Now, would they do first party? Would they do third party? We don't know yet, but to put some things in perspective, what I consider to be, and now granted, I don't have one, to probably be the best VR headset on Windows that you can buy is the HP Reverb G2. Keep in mind, that thing is $600 as a standalone product. So if you want like super high quality VR headset experience, it's not going to come cheap. So are people going to be willing to spend that kind of money for a headset on a console? Not quite sure. We'll see what Microsoft quite literally has up its sleeve and if they want to approach this. But people thinking that Microsoft doesn't go down this route are completely wrong. It's just right now it's been focused on the PC as of right now. Actually, I have an HP headset upstairs, and we used it last weekend with my daughter to look at Mars before the Mars rover landed earlier this week. Or last week, I should say. I guess it's technically last week. at this point. So also, Phil Spencer took the stage, or the virtual Teams live event stage, if you will, and talked at the AI gaming research event that I talked about previously as one of Microsoft's big things. Now, he didn't really announce, there were no new features or things announced, and this was not the venue for that to be happening, but he did call out a couple things first, because this summit, they actually kicked it off. They start by saying, hey, look, we are thinking 10 years in advance, like what is going to be the norm in 10 years? And so that's how Phil Spencer was approaching this. And he was talking about a future where game developers build cloud native games first before focusing on the traditional console side. He thinks that might be a future where people are just building games cloud natively. And the reason for that is he was saying he can envision a world where they have environments with 100,000 active players because it's built cloud natively. You can't do that today. I mean, I think the biggest game, and I might be wrong on this, but one of the bigger games is Call of Duty Warzone with up to 150 people on a single map at a single time. But that is approaching the boundaries of what is potentially possible. And in the future, 100,000 people might be able to play on the single game at a single time, but that would require some significant cloud technology, which isn't, I don't want to say it's not available today, but it's not widely used today. He also reiterated on the fact that there are 3 billion gamers around the planet. Now, that is including mobile gamers, that is including PC gamers, that is including like anybody who could be considered a gamer. And he believes fully, again, that xCloud is going to be the technology from Microsoft that is going to deliver the gaming experience to these end users, no matter what device they're on. And that is why they're scaling up so aggressively with xCloud. And he talked again about how Microsoft's major benefit with xCloud is that they already have data centers around the globe, and they can go put xCloud racks into these things without, I don't want to say without a major capital investment, but it's not like building a data center from scratch. It's nowhere close to be even being something like that. So that was sort of the focus. The conference is actually going on right now if you're watching this video on the day it was published, or tomorrow, the day after this video is published. And if there's anything of significance announced, I will definitely keep you abreast of what is going on there. Other gaming things Microsoft announced earlier this week was Microsoft is bringing GameStack Live April 20th through the 21st. Now, GameStack Live is a Microsoft gaming conference, but it is focused on Microsoft GameStack. And if you're not familiar with GameStack, GameStack is the tooling and platforming and services that would eventually enable those 100,000 players to play in the cloud at the same time. It's Microsoft's tooling that they pitch to game developers to bring them into the Microsoft family, or Microsoft portfolio, I should say, of development suites and services, and to allow them to build games at scale and for just millions of gamers around the globe. It's a If you're familiar with Microsoft Build, this is Microsoft Build, but for game development. It's a neat conference. And again, this is going to showcase the tools and technology that allow you to build these things, which is important because in a lot of these keynotes, they'll be talking about things that they're building towards and help us understand where xCloud and other services are starting to go. I believe it might have been GameStack Live. I can't remember where we first saw initially the touch-enabled controls for xCloud on a phone. I go like this with my fingers because that's me moving a virtual D-pad, if you will. Keep in mind that the Game Developer Conference, GDC, which typically happens in the spring, I believe got punted until July because of everything, and they're trying, I think their hope is to do it back in person, but we will see. Anyways, GDC is punted until July, so GameStack Live being in April is a good time for game developers to get up to speed on at least what Microsoft is doing in the game development space. And so there you go, guys. Been a packed early week, but just figured I'd round up the news for you. Hit that subscribe button because the only BS on this channel is me.